Who are you? And where are you going? What do you want? For the next 24 minutes, we're going to design and attain your ideal life. On the Way to Wow Show. Together, we'll find the ideal path to get you back on the track to success and happiness. On the Way to Wow Show with your host, Kevin Bemmel.
Part of finding our way to wow means understanding our identity. And central to that is knowing what we value. What are our ethics? Dr. Travis Smith, the author of Superhero Ethics, is going to help us figure that out. But before that, we're going to have a little bit of fun. Irina Ponomarenko is going to give us a lesson in brandy. What's brandy? What's cognac? Why should we drink them? How? Stay tuned. We're going right there now. So we're changing things up a little bit on this episode of the Way to Wow Show. Normally we have a bartender, but today we have with us Irina Ponomarenko, originally from Russia, came to the United States to do graduate work and was seduced by wine and spirits. I don't know, it wouldn't have been a very difficult seduction, I know, for me. Irina has since become a silver pin sommelier and a certified cognac and sherry educator. And so she's here today to spend some time with my colleague Sierra and I and with all of you talking to us about brandy, what it is, how to taste it, and all the nice things that go with that. So Irina, thanks for coming on the Way to Wow Show.
Thank you, Kevin and Sierra. So brandy is my favorite category. I shouldn't say my favorite, it's one of my favorite categories of drinks, but I love brandy and in particular cognac. So what is brandy? Brandy, in the narrowest sense, it is a distillate of wine. So people make wine and then they distill wine into brandy. Brandy, the word comes from the word for brandy wine or burnt wine. So initially people actually started distilling it as a way of basically making a concentrate of wine to reduce the volume for shipping.
Oh.
And then they, of course, transported that in barrels. And after some time, they discovered that it actually improved and had a taste that was quite distinct from wine and very interesting on its own. So many regions that grow grapes and make wine also distill brandy. There's Spanish brandy, there are multiple brandies from France. Armenia has a strong tradition of distilling brandy, Georgia. America, there's plenty of American brandies, so lots and lots of places. But to be called cognac, which is probably the most prestigious brandy you can think of, it can only come from the region of Cognac in the southwestern part of France.
Okay, so kind of like champagne and sparkling wine.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Okay, gotcha. Nice.
Armagnac, you might know, is another very famous brandy. It also comes from the southwestern part of France, but that region is south of Cognac.
Right.
In a slightly wider sense of the word, brandy can be a distillate of other types of fruit, but typically the word brandy is preceded by the name of the fruit. For example, pear brandy or apple brandy. Apple brandy, the most famous apple brandy is Calvados, which also comes from France. But again, lots and lots of places around the world distill all kinds of fruit brandies.
So we have 4 here, I guess, that we're going to taste, right?
We have 4 brandies. We have a fruit brandy that is distilled from pear. There is a brandy from Moldova. And there are 2 cognacs.
Okay. So what do we start with?
We will start with the pear brandy because, as I mentioned, fruit brandies typically focus on the fruit notes. Sometimes they are also called eau de vie. if they are unaged fruit brandies. So it is all about the purity of one fruit. So you're looking for the best expression of pear in
Great.
there.
If we're going to try 4, maybe we want to...
Maybe not enough glasses, but
That's good. Thank you.
now is there a way to drink this properly, per se, or I mean, obviously.
Well,
ingesting-
if you're used to tasting wine, typically you're directed to swirl the wine in your glass rather vigorously to release the aromas. You probably shouldn't do that with the spirits because they are higher in alcohol, and I prefer to gently swirl the glass
Oh, okay.
in my hands
As we just
to release the aromas.
As I swirl it around.
Yeah, you swirl,
We
but
live and you learn.
Just
That's right, that's right.
just be a little gentler with it, because if you swirl too vigorously, it's going to release a lot of alcohol in your nose.
So this has a nice nose of pear.
Yeah, that's what fruit brandies, eau de vie are all about. They're about the purity, the one note of the fruit that they're made from.
Okay.
So there isn't going to be a lot of complexity. It is about the fruit.
Okay, let's give this a try.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really smooth, actually.
Yep. And it would be good chilled, I think.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
It will tone down the alcohol a little more, and it will focus on the fruit. So the next one we'll be trying is a 2-year-old brandy from Moldova.
Okay.
It says it's aged in oak barrels for 24 months. During the Soviet times, they used to call their brandies cognac just because anywhere east of the Iron Curtain, everybody's just used to the word cognac as a generic word for brandy, but it is not correct. And if they want to be part of the European Union, they cannot do that anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This one I've actually had before. I like this.
So it was more of a way to have a familiar name associated with it, so people would be more likely to purchase
Yes.
it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Twirly twirl.
Light.
Like
Yeah, like that.
Don't do what we did last time.
You can kind of, it looks like there's residual sugar. Is that what we're seeing?
No, I think it's alcohol. There wouldn't
Oh.
be any residual sugar in a distillate. There,
right.
you can have sugar added after distillation for certain types of
Okay.
alcoholic drinks, but there wouldn't be sugar. It's just the alcohol. It's quite grapey. So this is distilled from grapes. It is distilled from wine. So I would imagine that it is. You should be looking for more notes other than just the grape. It's also aged in oak. So when a spirit is aged in oak, it also extracts certain flavors from the oak, like vanilla and spices.
Right. I would say this one tastes older than the other one. The other one felt a little more summery, if that is a thing. But
Yeah.
maybe that's
It is.
my
It is.
association with the fruit.
It is purely fruit, unaged. When a spirit spends some time in oak, 2 years in this case, it acquires other flavors.
All right, well, let's do our last one here.
This is so interesting. I wish there were more classes on how things came to be and the traits of different,
Yeah, right?
you know, the brewing process. Thank you so much.
So,
Oh, that's plenty, thanks. So this is an actual cognac, but it comes via Israel, which is one of the places you have to go to get cognac.
Perfect. Next travel plan.
so you can see that the nose of this cognac is much bigger, richer. There's more complexity. There's more integration. On a younger cognac or brandy, you're going to have here are the oak aromas, here are the fruity aromas. They're kind of separate
Right.
because it didn't really integrate as much. Didn't have that time, so it's more appropriate for, let's say, a cocktail. But with an older cognac, you have a lot more of that richness, complexity, and integration, and it's more pleasurable to drink on its own.
Yeah, and XO is minimum of how old?
Right now, the minimum is 10.
10, okay.
Yes, but many houses do age cognac longer.
Longer.
Yes, and it doesn't mean that all of it is 10 years, right? It means the youngest spirit in the blend. So cognac is typically blended
Right.
from a range of spirits of different ages, and the youngest spirit in the blend has to be 10 years old.
Excellent.
Thank you for all of this information.
Irina, really wonderful. And now, gosh, I mean, I've got more cognacs here, but unfortunately we're out of time. So we'll have to come back and do a cognac party, don't you think?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I think this is wonderful.
Thank you.
Great information, and really appreciate you coming on the show and teaching us all these insights about brandy and cognac. A lot of things I never knew before.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great. Cheers.
My next guest is Dr. Travis Smith. And I have my colleague Sierra here because she put me on to Dr. Smith's book, Superhero Ethics. Now, to show you what a giving man he is, the email I wrote to him after having read his books basically said, don't really know anything about superheroes, don't like comic books, but I found your book fascinating and I have to have you on my show. And lo and behold, he said yes. So, I mean, the idea, first of all, we don't think that much, I think, about ethics education. And it's really a crucial aspect of finding our way to wow. But then through the offices of superheroes, Travis is onto something here. So Travis, thank you so much for joining us on the way to wow. I'm going to give people just a little bit of your background. I realized I didn't do that. Travis has a PhD from Harvard. He's a professor at Concordia University. And he's really interested in the intersection between ethics and religion and science. Oftentimes people say things that don't go together at all. And he's also interested in the idea of storytelling as a teaching advice, and maybe that's how you got onto comic books. So Sierra, I know you were super excited to meet Travis. So go ahead, let's throw out the first question here. Let's engage the conversation.
Yes. So Travis, for people who don't know, the book pairs up many superheroes. And what we can take away from each of them as far as maybe inspiration or a life lesson. One of my questions is, which one of the characters do you find you draw from the most as a image of a hero or someone you notice you need to tap into their qualities?
Well, thank you for the question, Sierra, and thank you, Kevin, for having me on the way to wow. This is an exciting experience for me to be on your program. Right. So when I was deciding which superhero characters to conduct an analysis of in my book, I went to the most popular and well-known ones, the ones that had the first so many feature films that they were the focus of those stories. Characters that people might have already known from children's cartoons on Saturday mornings. And so I am someone who's read, let's say, too many comic books and could have easily, written a book dealing with 100 plus characters instead of the 10 I focused on. My actual personal favorite superhero is Captain Marvel, the Marvel version of Captain Marvel, who had a movie very recently. When I was growing up as a teenager, as any teenage boy might, I thought Wolverine was the coolest, and I also really liked the Green Lantern. And I was not a big fan of the Hulk or Batman, for example. And when I wrote my book, it was important to me to not just focus on my favorites, not just focus on the ones that I already felt like I had something in common with, or the ones that spoke to me personally. I really wanted to approach the subject in the way that I try to teach my students to approach works of philosophy, which is, in a generous, open-minded spirit. Don't just go to the ones that you already feel, intuitive attraction toward. But instead, if there's characters out there that other people love, you should try to understand why other people love them. Try to figure out what it is about other models of human excellence, people admire, people respect, look up to. If they don't speak to you, why not, find out what makes them so appealing to other people? And on the flip side, I made a point of being critical of the ones that I knew I liked too much to start off with. And so as a result of example, my analysis of Green Lantern, I don't think I like the character so much anymore. And all the things that used to appeal to me about the character, I realize are probably flaws in me that I need to work on overcoming. And so the book came out of an article in which I had compared Spider-Man and Batman. And I will confess, a kind of feeling that there's a fair amount of Peter Parker in my own personality. I sometimes wonder which of the various sort of pop culture characters I most like. I've got a bit of Peter Parker, a bit of Kermit the Frog, a bit of Rabbit from Winnie the Pooh, a bit of Anakin Skywalker. You can pick and choose from these kinds of, I'm a Charlie Brown, aren't I? And so I feel like ultimately the character of Spider-Man is the one that I associate most with as someone who offers me a standard of what I think is a good way to live in the world.
So how does someone begin to plumb the depths of these characters?
Right. I mean, it is the case that they're often not only read as, but written as, juvenile amusements for kids on Saturday mornings, right? With nothing more to them than four colors and two dimensions. But there's something about these characters, especially these classic superheroes that were created in the 50s and 60s, that it's stuck. So there must be something to them. They must, and not only have they stuck as part of American popular culture imagination, but worldwide, right? They speak to people from different cultures, totally different political regimes around the world, and I do think it is the case that the people who created these characters were doing more than that they let on, and that they were more educated to the literary, political, historical, religious traditions of Western society. People who ended up working in comic books decades ago were people who often had other aspirations as writers and artists, but they found work in comic books. Right. And so they were already coming to that business educated higher than comic books, and infused that education into the popular culture products that they were manufacturing. And plus they're tapping into the stories that you get from the biblical tradition, the classical Greek and Roman traditions, and also from mythologies around the world. I mentioned Thor, so there's a popular culture version of Norse mythology there. They'll go to ancient Egypt sometimes in these stories, or they'll meet the gods of Southeast Asia. And so part of the superhero storytelling is drawing upon aspects of the depths of a variety of human cultures.
So for someone who wants to deepen, have a deeper understanding of his ethical nature, where does that person start? Because if someone asked me that question, one of the things I would say was, well, go read Superhero Ethics, right? Because at its heart, and we talked about this before, at its heart, that's what the book is asking us to do. It's asking us to examine ourselves reflected against these icons of virtue in some way, and measure how do we stack up, good or bad, and then and really are these, is any particular one supposed to be the model, right, for me, right? So that's one way to approach that. Give us, if you would, another way we can approach deepening our ethical understanding, our engagement with that whole body of knowledge.
I'll tell you what worked for me when I was in my 20s. First off, I'll start off, I teach political philosophy now, but I was actually a math science kid growing up, and started chemical engineering to start off before I switched into my current field. And when you're a math science kid, the whole education system is arrayed to help you focus on the maths and the sciences. And so I did not get much of an education in the humanistic side of things because I was really good with the numbers. But I got a sense when I was a teenager that I was missing something. And so I started reading for myself. So I'd finish my calculus homework and I'd grab a copy of the Iliad, way over my head at the time. But then through college, I would continue with this. And to tell people, start reading, great works of philosophy, get out the Immanuel Kant and start with the Critique of Pure Reason, that's just not good advice, right? I mean, it's an important book, you should read it, but that's not where you start, right? And then it's the same with, read the Bible or the religious, great texts of the great religious traditions in general. Also, for a lot of people, off-putting and advice that isn't going to take unless they've already been educated to take it seriously. I tend to find, students that are raised to any religious tradition where they take text seriously have a real advantage over students today that don't have that education in their childhood. Doesn't matter from where in the world or what text. If you're raised to take text seriously, you've got an advantage over students that only know how to tweet and how to Instagram. And so reading is important. And so what I say is, instead of starting with the great works of philosophy, instead of starting with the books of Revelation, just find classic works of literature, right? And to do better than just all the TV streaming that we all do these days. And whether it's, as it was for me, trying out the Tolstoy and the Dostoevsky, whether you're the kind of person who's going to find it instead in the Austen Bronte, if you're going to find it instead in, the Dickens, or the Zola, who knows where, right? Try different things, but read the great works of literature. Take time to do that, because there's nothing more humanizing than reading the great works of literature, and to expose you to how complex the human condition is and the various ways in which some of the best minds have thought about how we have to handle our relationships with each other as best we can under the circumstances. That's the advice I give.
Okay.
Great advice. I feel like a kindred spirit, because I talk to people about great books as often as they'll listen.
Yeah, I just worry that, in your, Huxley Brave New World, all the great works of literature were locked away in a cabinet that only Mustafa Mann, the world controller, was allowed to read, right?
Right.
And I worry instead we're in a situation now where, they're out there for free. You can download PDFs of everything, or Kindle editions for 1 penny or whatever. And people just choosing not to, right? And so nobody needs to be forbidden the great books. Does not have to be made aware of their significance, importance, and appeal.
Absolutely. Travis, unfortunately, our time is up, but thank you so much for having this conversation with Sierra and me. A real treat. And I hope that we can talk again, maybe next season, and go even more into depth on what is, I think, a crucial subject when people are really trying to answer those two questions that we're helping them with. Who are you, and what do you want to do? The ethical foundations of that is crucial. So,
yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And as I told you, I thoroughly enjoyed your book and what it's about, and gave me a fun talking point with many people, and I've managed to get Kevin and others to read it. So thank you for writing that, and I hope that you have a good semester with your students.
Nice to meet you, Sierra. Thanks for your questions. Glad you enjoyed the book.
that's our show for this week. I want to thank my guests, Irina Ponomarenko and Dr. Travis Smith. Remembering what Travis said, how can we get on that path to better understanding our ethics, what we really want to be at our core? Read great books. So many out there, whether it's wonderful fiction like Dickens or Austen, or great tales like the Iliad and the Odyssey, or even the deep, deep things like Kierkegaard. pick something up and just give it a try. Stay tuned next week when my guests will be Colleen Hammond and Rabbi Mendel Schwartz. Courage at all times, my friends. Marie, you are still my belle, darling.